Alrighty. So we are here with two Wheelock students, graduates, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Very nice. Congratulations.
Thank
My
you.
name is Matt Orlando. I'm a current student at Boston University Wheelock School of Education. I'm going to school for physical education and coaching. And I've been sort of, I guess, everywhere in the job world, but what I want to do is sort of see what the two of you have had in your career at Wheelock, sort of what your experience was like, and how it's helped you get to where you want to be, or where you would like to be. But for starters, why don't we just introduce ourselves? Kristen, why don't you go first, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So yeah, my name is Kristen Lumley. I just graduated from BU Wheelock with my master's degree in child life and family-centered care. So I actually came from old Wheelock with the merger with BU. And so yeah, now I am looking for jobs, interviewing. I'm going to become a child life specialist, so working with children and families in the hospital setting, supporting them through that experience. And I'm really excited that I'm finally almost where I want to be with my career.
Nice. Cass, how about you introduce yourself as well?
Sure. I'm Cassidy Donohue. I am a recent graduate of BU Wheelock in the my master's program for special education. I also was at BU for undergrad in social studies education. I've been at BU for the last 5 years, and so this is my first year going into without BU. But I am in the process of applying for social studies positions, and I would love to be in a high school, but I'm open to being in a middle school as well. And I'm really looking forward to using the plethora of knowledge that I got from my special education master's degree and using that in the general ed classroom. That's really where my passion lies, is making sure that there's differentiated education in the general ed classroom and an emphasis on socio-emotional learning, and just making sure that my students have a well-rounded classroom experience to really drive home, being a well-rounded student.
Absolutely. I think that's sort of what we all look for in our education world. So now that we've introduced ourselves, I have a few icebreaker questions. We'll see how these do, but let's start with the first one. Since obviously the COVID-19 pandemic happened, we all were sort of isolated to our homes, and all of our classes went online, which obviously for me was very interesting. It was different, something that I was not used to. But obviously there were some interesting moments that would happen on Zoom. So what is one interesting moment that you can feel or you can remember that happened on one of your class Zooms, or just in a meeting or something of that nature for Zoom classes?
I can go ahead and start. I think, so this semester I was in a placement, and I was on Zoom with my students a lot of the time. And I think one of the most interesting thing that came out of Zooming with your students is that you get to see them in their home life. And we had a lot of students introducing their pets. We had birds on the chat. We had cats on the chat. It was a lot of animals being brought to the classroom, which was really fun. And I got to see a lot of my students in their own environment, and some of them did really, really well with that, and some of them did not as well with that. So I think seeing that diversity in how students attack this issue of being on Zoom, it was very interesting to see how that played on throughout the semester.
Very nice.
Cool. I think one example that comes to my mind was for our child life program. It's a tradition to do a pinning ceremony for the graduating students, just to really kind of signify, yay, you did it. You're actually a child life specialist now. And so because of COVID, we had to do that via Zoom. And so I think that was just interesting in terms of trying to give everyone their pin virtually. So like doing organizing a handoff and a little celebration in that sense. So we were creative and we did it, and it was a lot of fun. So
very nice, very nice. The second question, I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but obviously right now currently I'm working at Home Depot just because of the pandemic and just trying to put food on the table, everything like that. And I was sort of thinking about this idea for icebreakers, like what are some good questions? And I couldn't really think of anything because I know I wanted to add one more question, but with technology being what it is these days, obviously you guys know that, you two know that, kids these days are very into technology and memes and vines and all that stuff. So what is your favorite meme or vine that you've seen either currently or previously? I think that tells a lot about a person. So let's see which one it is.
Oh man.
I'll tell you what mine is. Okay, let's just get this started. All right. Have you seen the vine with the kid that's covered in peanut butter and his mom is like, does that feel good? And he's like, I mean, that's just, I think I could see that every single time and laugh at it.
yeah.
Classic vine.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Cass?
Me?
Yeah.
I think you're a little behind because the new wave is TikTok.
You're right. Okay, all right. I'm sorry. I'm old school. Okay.
Vine.
All right.
However, I can appreciate it. I can definitely appreciate it, but I think TikTok is definitely the wave, and you got to get on it.
I will look into it. Yes.
It's a lot of fun humor on TikTok. A lot of fun. It's very fun. So I think the thing about TikTok that's different than Vine is that it's less iconically memorable things and more just a constant flow of like funny things. So I'm gonna have to go with just, I don't know, I think TikTok is reigning supreme. And I grew up with Vine too, so I understand, but I think TikTok is something special.
I mean, you did talk about Vine being iconic, so I mean, I was in the world of when things were iconic, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. Kristen, what about
I appreciate it.
Yes. What about you, Kristen?
I too, I missed the Vine boat, but TikTok has like taken all of my time and sleep away from me. So it's so hard to pick just one TikTok. It just really is one of those things where you think you're gonna scroll for like 5 minutes and then it's 2 hours later.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I really like. So I guess this isn't like, it's more of a person on TikTok. It's oh shoot, his name's Steven, and he's the Dino Club kid. I just think he's hilarious.
I'll have to look into TikTok.
Me too.
I'm gonna have to create an account. Thank you guys. I appreciate that. Now, what's that?
You'll thank us and then you'll curse us later.
I'm sure I will. I'm sure I will.
All the time.
Yeah. No, I know TikTok. I have friends that actually are my age that want to be TikTok famous.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe I can become TikTok famous somehow.
There you go.
But it is interesting. Like I see a lot of kids, working, us working with young kids. Like that's all they look at is like TikTok.
Oh, totally.
It's sort of interesting.
Sorry to interrupt, but it's also interesting how we can like kind of share information via TikTok. Like I've seen a lot of like doctors will get on and share like COVID updates, but they make it in like fun and creative ways. So I just think that's kind of something that might be the future of, I don't know, like child life interventions, or even like in the classroom, like figuring out different ways to teach kids.
Absolutely. I mean, I know when I was growing up, one of my favorite assignments that I ever had in my life was a 7th grade biology assignment where I had to make a music video to come up with the parts of a plant cell. And so I think assigning something similar with TikTok, I mean, kids would love that. They'd eat that up. So I love that engagement. And I feel like knowing what your students are doing, I mean, even if you also find enjoyment in it, it's really helpful to connect too. So tying it all back together,
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. I mean, I feel like there's, my brother actually is a teacher at Needham, and he came up with sort of a short project with his history class and just basically just said, this is the picture, create a meme with what you've learned. And they like created a meme. It's like, I mean, it's so simple, but it's so fun to work with in the education world. And so speaking of the job search. You two have you been trying to find jobs recently? Okay, so tell me about, with the situation going on, how difficult or easier it's been. What are your experiences with, if you've had interviews or something like that? What is the situation? What has it been with this pandemic happening? What has it been like having to search for an education job?
I can go first if you don't mind, Cassidy.
Sure.
So I have actually been lucky to get quite a few interviews, but I've noticed that timelines are taking like much longer, or they're very tentative with setting things up or maybe coming in person. Not a lot of hospitals are able to do in person, so I am doing a lot of Zoom interviews, but I do, now that we're kind of seeing improvements with the pandemic, I do have one set up at the end of the month to go in person to the hospital. So I do think that that's definitely an improvement. But I definitely think overall, I've just had to learn to be patient. And I think that's what's been challenging, because, we're recent graduates. I mean, I can't only speak for myself, but eager to finally do the job that we've been wanting to do and get out there, and put our knowledge and skills to the test. But it's just kind of a waiting game, because a few, for example, actually, I had an interview set up with Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. And the day before, they emailed me and they're like, "I'm so sorry, we have to cancel because we have to go on a hiring freeze. And there's no point in doing an interview if we can't proceed with the process." So of course I understood, but it just becomes a little frustrating at times, especially when you do get excited and you put all that like prep into getting ready for an interview. But that's kind of been my experience in a nutshell.
Yeah. I don't think I'm quite as far as you are quite yet, but I'm definitely in the application process right now. And I think, like you said, the waiting game is really huge. I think I've learned a lot of patience, or trying to learn a lot of patience, because I think it's really difficult when you're trying to do this all yourself and you're trying to get as much done as quickly as possible. But then there's a lot of waiting for others. There's a lot of putting your it's a lot of relying on other people as well. And so I think that's a big stressor for me. Is I love to take control and do as much as I can. And having to, like, there's so much communication that this involves. And of course, this is all skills that I'm working on and doing really great with, considering all things considering. But there's a lot of communication that a lot of it would be happening in person. So I think it's just kind of managing those roadblocks and reevaluating, okay, what can I do today and what can make myself productive today and how can I move forward where I'm at.
Yeah.
And so I think being patient with others and being patient with yourself as well, and knowing that you're doing all that you can to be moving forward is really huge. Because if you're not happy with how you're doing, it's going to be a lot harder for you to sell yourself in an interview. It's all about that confidence and knowing that you are doing exactly what you need to be doing, and that it's a process. And even if it doesn't feel like you're where other people are in that process, just know that you're in the process, and it is a process. And I think I've just said the word process about 5 times, but it's really important for you to know that you're in there, you're doing what you have to be doing. And it's really important to recognize that it may not be instant gratification as we're all used to. And I think this pandemic has really shown us like what it means to really have true patience and understand that things don't come as quickly as you'd like them to come. But it's all about pushing yourself forward and realizing, okay, I'm doing this. I'm doing the best I can. This is where I'm at.
I agree 100% about pushing yourself forward. And I also think what I've learned is it's okay to maybe take a day off from the job search or applying and putting my application out, because sometimes it just becomes so tedious and it just is a lot. So also checking in with yourself and making sure you take time to maybe take a day if you need it.
Absolutely. And on that too, I think when you are taking those days to yourself, like reminding yourself, because I think a huge part of this pandemic as well is that we've all kind of lost the 9 to 5 mentality. And when you're sitting in front of your computer all day long, I think the thing I say the most to my friends is that if I could, I would chuck my laptop out a window, because I feel like I'm just living in front of my laptop all day long. And so when you're doing that and you're on and off and you're not creating a schedule for yourself, it's really easy to just overwork yourself and do things at all times during the day. So it's just being realistic with yourself and understanding we're in such a crazy scenario right now that all of our schedules are off. Everyone's kind of trying to navigate what we're doing right now, and having that same expectation for others as well as yourself is really important.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, 100%. I mean, on the idea of that, like, what have you two been, what have you been doing to sort of de-stress or to decompress in this situation? Obviously, you two are applying for jobs after jobs after jobs, as it sounds like, and that's stressful, and that's sort of a situation that you're sort of like, is this ever going to be ending? What are some things that you two have been doing to sort of just ground yourself and be able to say, you know what, like you keep saying, like, I have to wait, I have to be patient, I have to understand that it's not going to happen right now. What are some things that you two have been doing in order to keep grounded?
I think one of the most interesting things that I've kind of adopted during this pandemic is maybe not yoga all the time, but definitely putting in the time to be in tune with your body and not just the screens in front of you. Taking time to step away, and take time for yourself, whether that be at night. I try to read at night and put my phone on my desk and get myself away from the screens, because having that good night's sleep is going to help you have the better day tomorrow. I mean, I mentioned yoga, and there was a good solid like 2 weeks in the beginning of quarantine where I was doing yoga every day, and I was really loving it. I think now that I've gotten more into the process of applying for jobs, it's gotten less as a priority, but I know that I'm even saying it right now, I love it. So I want to get back into it. Even just like doing breathing exercises. I mean, laying in bed with a meditation app and just letting it kind of run through, that's been really helpful for me. And I've never tried that before. I think this pandemic has brought on such different levels of stress. I mean, we've all had stress our whole lives, but I think this unique situation where you're trying to finish a master's degree, where you're trying to apply for jobs, where you're stuck inside and you feel very stagnant all the time. I think being in tune with your body and making sure that you are healthy in all the ways that you can control, because that's what we're looking at here, is that's what you can control, is going to make your day better. Mm-hmm. It's going to make you more productive. It's going to make you think better, be healthier. So I think just making sure and with this time that we have, like taking care of your body and making sure that that's a priority has been really big for me this pandemic. And I've definitely appreciated that time that I have to do that, and making those rules for myself. Like my phone stays at my desk and doesn't come with me to my bed and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. I have been like you said, checking in with myself and listening to my body, because I have a tendency to just kind of like push through just to think what I need done and like off my mind. But I learned quickly, like throughout the pandemic and like the beginning of my job search, that like that's not very productive. So I've been learning to be more intentional about self-care. So I obviously, like, I've been preached like throughout my whole academic career how important self-care is, especially in the world of child life, but I'm just not intentional about doing it, because it's very easy to, I think, sit down and watch a Netflix episode and call that self-care. Mm-hmm. But it's not me being intentional and saying like, all right, this is what I'm doing for myself today, and giving myself that opportunity to regroup. It's just sitting and watching Netflix. So because of that, I have been taking every weekend, I don't apply for jobs. I take the weekend and I spend it with my family, because I think my family and my friends who are still in my hometown ground me. And I'm lucky that Pennsylvania is in the green for COVID. So things are more open here and I can go see my friends and have some more sense of normalcy. which has helped with the job search, because I think it's hard when you get a rejection to not take it personally. Or if you, maybe not a rejection, but if you don't make it to that next step after the initial interview. So I think checking in with myself and saying, all right, what do I need to do? What are my needs? And this isn't like a plug or anything, but I actually bought 2 books that I'm in love with recently. So this is called The Positivity Kit, and it's so cute. It's basically, it says instant happiness on every page. So you fill out, it gives you different prompts, and you like can draw in it, you can write in it. So like this page is all the places that I want to travel, and you can like draw or write all of that down. You can, this page says, write yourself a message in the sky, something that would make you smile if you saw it. So it's just all like cute little prompts to make you happy and like ground yourself in thinking about things that do make you happy instead of focusing on the negativity or the stress of what's happening in the world, pandemic, and just in the United States in general, as well as the job search, because there's just a lot happening. And then I got another book, again, because I have noticed that I'm not intentional about self-care, and it's called Make Yourself Cozy. And it's literally a guide for practicing self-care, and it comes with all of these cute little graphics of suggestions for self-care practice. So like bake a cake or light a candle or put on cozy socks and just different things like that. And I found that that's helpful, because then I'm not the one thinking, oh, like, I know I need to do self-care, but what can I do? Because there's so much that you can do. So yeah, I've found that to be helpful.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things, and you know, we've learned in this situation that I think we've learned internally a lot about ourselves. I think that, for me at least, you know, sitting down, like you were saying, Cassidy, and just breathing or something like that, like I would have never thought something like that would have helped me. So internally, obviously, and personally, like we've learned a lot about self-care more than anything. I think it's more of a situation where you can look at it as half empty and say, like, you know, there's been an actual pandemic in this world that's happening. And that is a terrible situation, but how are we going to get out of it? And I think that situations that, you know, people that take it on and sort of understand what they need is something that's very important. And I think that that is something that is coming out of this pandemic. Specifically, is just sort of your personality and your personal wishes. And like you said, like, where's one place that you want to travel? You sit down, you think about it, and you're like, well, maybe I can go here, or I want to go here, or I've always wanted to go here. And what, you know, in reference to you two looking for jobs, I mean, it's a situation where the world is your oyster. I mean, if you wanted to teach at a place over across the world, or if just in your backyard, or if you want to be at a nursing home or at a hospital across the country, like, it's possible now to actually really think about it and sit down and say, is this a really good, is this the right thing for me? So I think that I think that is something that is important to learn and understand about this pandemic, is that, you know, there's a lot of internal progress that you can make with situations like this. On the topic of that, what is one thing that you can say you've learned about yourself than you would have ever if we were just sort of walking to class and just sitting down in the classroom every single day? Like, I know for me, I've appreciated the little things a lot more. Like, you know, because I've had more time, I've been able to spend time with my dogs, and we go for a walk every day. And that simple little walk of just being there and sort of feeling the personality of my dogs, and just the emotional connection I have with them. Like, I never would have thought I would have had that. But since this COVID-19 pandemic, I've been able to have time to walk with my dogs and have that opportunity to sort of really get to know them. As funny as it sounds, but like, yeah, like, I've been able to get to know my dogs more. What are some things that you two have learned about yourself, or learned even something you need to work on? What are some things that you can think of?
Well, I think there's two big ones that I think I've kind of really realized during this pandemic. Is I think the first one is that I think I'm really trying to reframe stress as like, instead of calling it like, oh, I'm so stressed out, oh, I'm so anxious today, like, oh, I'm so this. I'm trying to reframe it as like stress being growing pains, and stress being the indicator from my body, again, like being in tune with my body, the indicator from my body that something needs to change. We need to figure this out in a different way. We need to make a different move in order to alleviate ourselves of this stress. Because I think I've gotten really good at those kind of avoidance strategies of like the breathing, the yoga, the taking the step away. But I think it's really important to be able to sit there and say, okay, I'm really stressed today. I feel like there's a lot I need to get done. I'm looking at my list of things I have to do, and I'm saying, okay, what can I do to use this stress to get myself to do something positive and productive? Mm-hmm. And I think that comes in the mindset that stress is this growing pain, that it indicates that you're ready for a change and it's got to happen for you to move forward. And I think also, leading to my second point, is having a good support system is really, really crucial. And I think especially with this pandemic, I mean, I'm in New York, so I have a lot of friends that are very much touched by this pandemic. And I'm really lucky that I'm not, in a severe issue with this pandemic, but I know a lot of my close friends have been. So I think just knowing that you can be there for another person and another person can be there for you. And I think being able to take the time to care for others has been really emphasized during this time. I mean, we're social people, and I think being stuck inside, it kind of makes you look at how, I mean, I'm with my family. So me and my brothers have gotten really, really close during this time. I mean, my brothers are both in college, and I've just graduated with my master's. And so we're all kind of around the same age. And I think just having that understanding of each other and the time at home that we really wouldn't have had at this age with each other has been really, really helpful in ways that I didn't really expect. I think we've become really good support systems for one another, and we're there to talk about like real issues. Because I know that for me, I've been craving to be around people my age. And I think my brothers have been really, really helpful for me in that, and being able to talk about, like, what's going on, and like how are you doing, and all that stuff, and just kind of talking out our life with each other has been really, truly helpful for me. So I think it's both of those things, is that realizing that stress can motivate you, and also having that support system with people that you're close to.
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I think for me, I've learned that it's okay to have a bad day. Mm-hmm. Just don't live there. Like, feel your feelings, and your feelings are valid, but don't live there. Like, I've heard the saying, I don't know who said it, but like, your feelings are visitors. So acknowledge that they're there, figure out why, if it's not obvious, and then figure out what you need to do to keep moving forward. And I think that's shown up not only with the job search, but with the pandemic. So that was something that I definitely needed to learn. And then another thing that you also touched on, Cassidy, was just having a growth mindset, because this has just been so challenging, especially as, our final semester ever getting cut short, not getting graduation, not getting that closure that, I mean, is super important to a lot of people, but it is for me. So having a growth mindset of like taking on these challenges and learning from them, and figuring out how I can become more resilient because of it, or flexible. Being flexible is something that has just been a lesson that has been like beaten over my head the last like 2 years, because first for me, it was the merger.
Sure.
Just having to go through that and, go with the flow and figure out, what that's going to look like for my education, and now the pandemic. So I think really learning how to be flexible when there's just things that are so out of your control. So that has been two major lessons for me.
Absolutely. And just to build on that for just a second, I think what you were saying about feelings being visitors, I think I really appreciate that. And I also wanted to just add in kind of a strategy that I've been using to go to bed, because I know that going to bed at this time is really a difficult time of day, because I think a lot of your thoughts are really ruminating there. But something that's been really helpful for me is kind of imagining them like bubbles. And so like I'll get a tough thought, like a really tough thought that I'm like, I have to fix this. Oh my God, I'm stressed, blah, blah, blah. And I'll picture it like a bubble and I'll pop it. And that's been really helpful for me, and not something that I've ever tried before this pandemic, but I don't know where I got it from, but it's been really, really helpful. And I think that definitely ties into the whole feelings are visitors and don't live there idea. I mean, it's so important to know that you can move beyond what you're feeling.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a great sort of mindset as well, and sort of an imaginary idea too about just, ideas being all around you and stuff like that. Like, that's great, because obviously that your mind is working and you're thinking, you're challenging thoughts and stuff like that. So that's a great idea and a great thought mindset. Obviously, we understand internally what exactly is going on. We've learned more about that. Mm-hmm. But for the undergrads and for those like myself that are graduating this coming year, what are some advice, or from your experience with this, what is some advice that you can give? We talked about sort of being patient and everything like that, but what are really some ideas for these kids that have, first of all, that have never dealt with something like this? And, we expect the walking across the aisle to get our cap and gown and turning our thing and everything like that. Like, what are some advice that you can give to these students that are growing and building themselves to that final year, with you now being graduated during this pandemic?
That's a great question.
Yeah, sure. So I think something really important that I've learned, and places where I've fallen short, is that there are days when I'm kind of trying to be like, let me give myself a break and let me take a day off from productivity. And I think that where I fall short with that is that I can tend to let myself just plan for nothing in that day. And I think that sets me back more than it does put me forward. So in that light, I would say a huge thing that I've learned about being successful in school and being successful in general is like scheduling your day in a way that can, that you break down, what do I want to accomplish today? And this can be even for leisure. I mean, if you're taking that day off, I think it's really powerful to say, okay, in the morning, I'm going to take a slow morning and take a nice shower and use all my bath products and do this, and kind of schedule it out for yourself so you know what you can look forward to, and you can know, what you want to get done. And that, on the flip side, I think is very important to do that for productivity. But I want to emphasize, it's a really healthy habit to get into, and something that I'm still learning and working with. And I'm noticing that on days that I do this, I do better, even on my leisure days, and especially on my productivity days. Scheduling those times when you want to be doing this assignment for an hour and a half. And I know that I utilize this a lot in my master's program. You want to be doing this assignment for an hour and a half, and then you're taking that break and scheduling it in, and then going back and saying, okay, I want to do this assignment for the next hour and a half, and then I take a break. And so I think managing your day in that realm is so helpful for regulating yourself and knowing, okay, this is what I can get done. I can't expect myself to get 5 assignments done in an hour and a half, but I can get this 2 pages done, or things like that. Like setting meaningful expectations for yourself and knowing that you're not going to become the superpower person that's going to get everything done in an hour. But when you schedule out your time like that, it really, really helps you get things done. And I think a big reminder is that even when you feel like you're not making progress, you are. Like, you're learning from the experiences that you're taking, and you're you're in these moments that you may not realize how much you've learned from them until afterwards, which has been something for me, is that I look back and I'm like, I learned X, Y, and Z, and how to be productive and how to appreciate myself and how to achieve, even if I feel like I'm not. I mean, I could get great grades and still look at it and be like, oh, well, but, and just adding in that but is so detrimental for yourself, and just saying, you can do this, and you're learning and you're doing things and you're achieving and succeeding even in ways that you might not recognize for yourself. So I think taking the time to recognize where you are succeeding and where you are managing your day and where you are managing your stress, because I think stress can get in the way of realizing these things about yourself and getting in the way of your self-esteem. So I think self-esteem is just one of the most important things to have when you're a student, especially at BU, where it's tough to get through a day of school, but we do it, and it's really rewarding when you can take that time to say that you've met these expectations and you are succeeding and you're doing what you need to do to make yourself succeed. I think just being in touch with that and making sure that you are your own biggest supporter as well, because you need it.
Yeah, I love everything you just said. I think piece of advice that I would give would be challenges will happen, especially in grad school. I feel like my grad year was probably the toughest year that I had.
Yes.
But the reason why I was able to persevere was because I had that growth mindset. So I'm just really going to drive that home. Just really embrace challenges. Try and pick up what you can as a learning experience. And sometimes that's not going to come until, the saying 2020 is hindsight is always 2020.
Absolutely.
That thing. So just really embracing that, because if you have that growth mindset, you will grow and learn so much more in the end. But also just from my personal experience with the pandemic, I got caught up in what you were saying, Cassidy, about succeeding and doing what I needed to do, to get done by the end of the day and whatever. And I kind of forgot to live a little bit. So my grad year, I had 2 clinical internships. I spent my weekends working at Shippies, good old Shippies. And because of that, the weeks blurred together, and I didn't take advantage of living in the city and going and doing things, or, going out with my friends or getting together for like a wine night, just anything. It really truly became go to class, go to internship, do homework, go to work, make money, and just all of this. And then the pandemic happened, and I regretted that, because that time I kept pushing things off. I'm like, oh, I'm going to have the whole rest of the semester to, I don't know, go to the Boston Commons when it gets nicer out. I'll wait for a day that it's not as cold, and it just kept pushing different things off. And then I didn't have that time because of all this. So I think it's important to, again, like you were saying, do what you need to do in order to succeed and set yourself up for success. But don't forget where you are right now in the moment of being a student, not being a full-fledged adult, and having fun and actually living in Boston, because Boston's such a great city and there's so much to do there. So I really wish I wouldn't have forgotten that this year.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think you two said it perfectly. I think it's just a situation where the idea of appreciation comes into mind.
Yeah.
So that was great. I think we're going to wrap things up. I wanted to say to you two and the class of 2020, congratulations. You did it. Obviously, it was not easy. It was never easy to begin with. It's never easy to begin with, but you two and everyone in the class of 2020, you did it. You're on to bigger and better things. This is a stepping stone in your life that you can always come back to and remember, but you two and everyone in class of 2020 did it. There's a famous quote that I will quote right now. It's a lyric more than anything, but back in the day, if you remember, I know you guys are TikTokers, but back in the day, there was a rapper named Tupac, and in one of his songs, he said, through every dark night, there's a bright day after that. So no matter how hard it gets, stick your chest out, keep your head up, and handle it. And I think you two have done a great job with that. I think everyone in the class of 2020 has done a phenomenal job with that. So congratulations.
Thank you so much, Matt, and good luck to you.
Thank
Yeah,
you very
good
much.
luck.